Cool.
All right, I'll go ahead and kick it off here. Thank you so much, Maddie, for setting this all up. We appreciate it. And welcome everyone to Unmute, How to Design Engaging Digital Events, presented by Capital Factory and the good folks over at Austin Design Week. My name is Eric Moe. I'm the sole designer over at Capital Factory, Austin's very own startup accelerator / event space / mentor network / center of gravity for all things entrepreneurship in Texas. But personally, I hope y'all have heard of us through our kick-ass events that we host. You know, Austin Startup Crawl, South by, Austin Startup Week, Fed Supernova, just to name a few. I put together this panel to share what we've learned by taking those huge in-person events and transforming them into digital events. And I'm fortunate to work alongside some other talented creatives who make this transition possible. Justin Denson has a knack for creating new job positions at Capital Factory, working in virtual reality, podcasting, and producing all new media across the company. A self-taught jack of all trades, Justin always finds a way to roll his interest in tech, gaming, and media into his work with polished results. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And next up, we've got Erin Miller. Erin Miller has worked in most departments here at Capital Factory, from community engagement to emerging technology to her current position, designing programming to connect startups to corporations. Erin is an Austin Design Week alum, traveled around the country making movies, and co-founded Out There Productions with other racially ambiguous and mildly attractive millennials. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here, y'all. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Well, y'all, I want to start with an icebreaker, but I think we got to break the ice by talking about our recent Capital Factory staff challenge here. We were competing to draw the best hand turkey portraits. And I got to ask you guys, what did you think of it? I'm going to share some of these hand-drawn portraits right now. We've got Erin Miller's, I believe, right here. We got a peace sign on a turkey hand. And we've got, what else we got here? We've got, go away. We've also got Justin's around here somewhere, but that's something we do at Capital Factory. We try to do some engaging things with our own staff here. What did you guys think of that challenge?
Oh, to us, I think the challenge was rigged.
Here's Justin's, by the way.
You thought it was rigged, Justin?
Yeah,
rigged?
I had the best. If we're talking about the team photos, I had the best one. I think mine was very realistic, and it was not taken into account that it was drawn digitally.
Nah, this is not about the portraits. This is about the hand turkeys only.
Okay, well, still, that's rigged. I think Eric disqualifies himself for being the designer.
Okay, y'all,
I always appreciate a drawing competition as the only graphic designer at my company. I think some of us know about how, that can feel when you're the one guy there.
Yeah, it was hard to compete with that one.
Well, let's keep it moving here. I'm going to stop my share. And we wanted to let everyone know, if you folks want to answer or ask some questions in the Q&A function of Zoom, please feel free. We'll try to field those questions as they come to us. And we'll just be trying to read the chat here and there to try to get some more questions, make this a little bit more interactive as we have our little panel here. But I wanted to start off by talking about what Capital Factory used to be like before COVID. So do either of y'all have a story of a big old event that we used to host before all of this started?
Yeah, I'll take it. So Capital Factory, for people who aren't in Austin, it's located right smack dab in the middle of downtown. And it is really our physical center where people can come and celebrate entrepreneurship. And that can be through happy hours, presentations, workshops, any of that. But we really prided ourselves on the physical space because it was a cool place for people to gather and host events. And one of my favorite events that I started out doing in community engagement was our community showcase, which basically introduced founders who were part of our community. We also introduced new mentors and new staff members. And it was a really fun thing that would happen at like 4 p.m. And it was a great template for all of the other events that we hosted too, because in addition to programming, there was like a bar, there was trivia, there were pitches, there was music, and just a lot of great ways that people could engage with each other rather than just listening to a talk. So a lot of our events looked like this. Justin, do you remember those?
Oh yeah, they were very fun. I never ran an event, so I was just kind of running around taking photos, probably having a drink, but yeah, connecting with people in various ways, just kind of running into someone that you might know, or that you that there was someone and you introduce them, get introduced to, was always pretty good, and definitely miss those.
Yeah, and I'll say that from Jen Blatz in the chat, she just said that she can't even count how many events she went over in Dallas, because we have events in Houston, we have events in Dallas, all over Texas, basically. Sometimes we stray beyond Texas, but the graphic design side of it is that a lot of my job used to be making a lot of signs, and Justin remembers how stressed out that used to make me. But we have such a big space that, wayfinding used to be a really big name of the game for me. And that's translated a little bit digitally, but I can't say that I was sorry to have to prove like 300 unique signs the day before events happen. So
physical signage, not
physical
digital.
signage. Yeah. So, and digital signage too, eventually. So it's, for Justin and I, we're a little bit more on the creative side. So it's about the front end of the event. We're preparing assets, and we're kind of preparing for all the creativity that's going to go into everything. Just in a little bit about the back end too, because of how you have to make all the videos about what actually happened during our events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then, as we all know, March happened, and then suddenly these, this entire picture of people stuffed in our giant event space now makes me nervous, because we can't do that anymore. COVID happened, it's not safe, and Capital Factory actually transitioned away from, these huge in-person events to digital events before a lot of people were asking it. Certainly before in Austin, we had the mandatory work from home order. So I wanted to ask the next question, which was, what was the process like pivoting from in-person to remote events?
Yeah, I'll take this one a little bit. It was a little bit easier on my end. I don't know if you could tell with this kind of setup, but I'm a little bit adept to working from home. I'm big on like streaming, gaming, and like online culture. So it wasn't too difficult, but I guess I would say like uh, helping others pivot to kind of understand how to work in a virtual environment, what they need to do was probably the hardest part that I can think of. But everyone was able to learn pretty quickly.
I'd say that's true. It was a quick transition, even though we didn't know how long it was all going to last. How about you, Aaron? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I was not used to working from home. I am incredibly extroverted, and I thrived in those big crowds. So it was kind of sad when I didn't get to crowd surf anymore at Capital Factory. But we started transitioning into more of like a virtual work from home style. We eased into it a little bit. So, for example, I ran an event called the Cyber Accelerator, which basically it paired companies that were in the Department of Defense with investors in Austin and in Texas, so that they could apply for a cyber loan, which is small business IR. I don't know what the IR stands for. There's so many acronyms. But that event it kicked off in March. So we had all the presenters present live, and then we sent the recording to an audience. So it was live streamed, but it was also recorded. So that was kind of like our half and half intro when like the whole work from home thing started. And then after that, we created like a research and development team to transition fully into virtual. And that team is called Virtual First. So we basically just had like a small tiger team whose priority was to find out what the best event hosting platforms were and testing them with those companies to see what would be a great fit for transitioning fully to virtual.
And my favorite word there, tiger team. We use that a lot in the first few months of this. I can't emphasize this enough, how even though the three of us and everyone else at Capital Factory, we live and breathe events, it was just totally uncharted territory. We're like, whoa, what are we going to do here? And fortunately, as Justin kind of hinted to before, we had a little bit of a head start because of our investment in gaming and streaming and things that go along with that. And design-wise, I was a little bit worried, I have to say, because I was like, a lot of my job was creating designs for spaces, physical spaces. And then I thought, well, will there suddenly be an absence for that? But it turns out that when you're all digital, everything has to also look good. So I ended up being busier than ever. So the transition was kind of rough for me. But ultimately, I think actually very helpful. I've learned so much in these past few months, and I'm really encouraged by some of the results we've gotten from our digital events, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But let's talk a little bit about what happened at the virtual event that you were the most proud of. What's a kind of like, let's hit it out of the park, complete the arc of our story here, where we were totally digital and it finally kind of came together for us. Has anyone got one?
Aaron, you want to go?
Yes, I'll go. So the virtual event that I was most proud of was the LGBTQ plus in tech event that Capital Factory produced alongside Accenture. And that was the first fully virtual event that I ran. And it was really cool to work with like a bigger company and to sort of provide these like fast solutions for delivering for a sponsor, and also providing stats of engagement, because like big companies are investing in us to produce content, to create opportunities for startups to connect with them and with each other, and with investors. So they needed like a platform to sort of do that. And so it was fun to like brainstorm the content and create engaging but also quality programming, because a lot of feedback that I have like received but also have given is that it's kind of boring watching talking heads. And so like all of these things are talking heads, and the way to make it more engaging is to have engaging content that doesn't seem like a lecture. Like, this is super fun. Like, we're just talking, we're all homies, we're here in the chat, like saying great things. And I think a great way, one of the biggest things that I saw from this summit was that people were engaging in chat. They were like being super supportive, bringing up different discussion points on how inclusion is working at their companies. But also another feature in Hopin, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit later when we're talking about like our top platforms, is using polls in order to get people like clicking and engaged instead of just like watching a screen. So just like small interactive elements make a huge difference.
I mean, absolutely. Go for it, Justin.
Oh, I was going to say, to kind of add on to what Aaron was saying, it's kind of similar to when I was running our podcast. It doesn't really matter who's talking or what they're talking about. It's kind of how that information is conveyed to people. So if it's very, question, answer, you're going to have people that don't want to engage, that don't pay attention. And when it's fun and engaging, you get more of a response.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Aaron, you made a really good point that I want to kind of circle back to, that it wasn't like, oh my God, things are completely different. It's kind of like, we're doing things that are similar to plenty of online events. It's those tiny changes, those tiny little things you can tweak to make it a better experience for everyone, that I think it really lies in a lot of our success. And, Yeah, it's as simple as being homies with the people on your panel. There you go, right? Now, I want to go ahead and answer a question I've seen a couple of times here, and hopefully this is popping up on the screen here. But shout out to Brianna Mazio and Brianna Chenkin, the two Briannas here, holding us to task. You know, what are our favorite digital platforms for holding digital events?
Yeah, Aaron, you want to go because you mostly deal with it?
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So I'm going to answer that in two answers. My favorite platform to attend events is going to be Hopin, and it's I believe it's Hopin, HOPIN.to. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that is really, really fun to attend on as an attendee. And the reason is because you have a main stage, but you also have the ability to break out into different rooms within the same URL. And you also have the ability to host events within Hopin, but that's not my favorite, and I'll get to that next. Hopin also provides really amazing statistics after you close your event, and it's very good at data tracking. So yeah, that's a screenshot from the LGBTQ plus in tech summit, and you can see that there are people engaging on the chat on the side. There's a tab for polls, so people can go in there and like submit their like their answers to questions to get people to engage. Yeah, it's super cool. They even have like little booths, so like stickers that are at the bottom of the event page that you can click in and still stay within the event to learn more about sponsors, participating companies, etc. When it comes to the back end, my favorite platform that we use that Justin is also on all the time is called StreamYard. Yeah. And StreamYard, the logo is a little duck with headphones. And
that's the most important thing you got to understand. It's a duck with
exactly.
I can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, talk about StreamYard.
Yeah, so when we started doing all of our virtual events, we needed kind of a way, obviously, to cast into other programs. And I'm very familiar with OBS. It's Open Broadcast Studio, but not everyone has like a PC to be able to run or kind of stream into other sites. So StreamYard really came in handy. It's a super simple platform. It's essentially Zoom and OBS put together. You just send someone a URL, they'll join the back end, and you can throw everyone up on a screen, stream to like 8 different destinations at once. If you're on YouTube, you can get all the YouTube comments directly in the chat, throw them up on screen, all different sorts of layouts, and easy customization. So it's been
awesome.
Super helpful.
Yeah, I know I've been able to work with both of those. And from a design standpoint, I'm here to say, folks, you can customize a lot of stuff on them. And I end up doing a lot of that. You got custom banners, backgrounds, you can style your entire event the way that you want to. And I don't think it has to be super expensive either. There are plans that I think work for every kind of organization in both of these platforms. And I wanted to highlight a big thing that I've been working on, which is Sococo. Let me pull up the right thing here. Sococo. So a weird part of my job these past few months has been suddenly I had to learn how to be a game designer. And what we have here is this platform where you have these rooms where you have a little avatar and you go into the separate rooms. As you can see, we've got a big stage that emulates a real Capital Factory stage. We've got a disco, we've got a library, we've got a moon base. We've got all sorts of interesting little places to break out and meet people. And even when we did our Austin Startup Week, we had a huge startup themed space where each part of the letters was an individual room, which had a startup pitching to potential customers, investors, that kind of thing. It shows that you can use something like this for a trade show, which I think is pretty interesting. And once you're inside, you get to have a little, your little bubbles pop up and you can do a little video conferencing one-on-one with people. And we use this all the time. We just had a big meeting in Zoom this morning across the entire company, or not in Zoom, in Sococo. And it's a weird way to kind of feel like, hey, I'm back in the space. I'm back in the mindset of, being in an actual physical event. It bridges the gap in a way that I think was pretty unexpected. So I wanted to shout out Sakoko. I think there are other solutions that are kind of like that. A kind of video game adjacent solution. I know some people even use Minecraft, which I think is innovative. And I think whatever you can use works. Go for it, Justin.
Yeah, I saw Brianna said in the chat, it gives Among Us vibes.
And we've used, Among Us to have meetings too. So, you can be creative.
Yeah.
And I like that comment. Oh, go for it.
Sakoko is really fun. Like Eric said, it's very customizable, and everybody's little avatar looks like a little gumball. So I guess it's fun in that way.
It's, again, it's just a little touches that really do make the difference, I would say, for Sakoko. Let's see here. We had some pretty good questions that were also related to the platforms here. I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on breakout rooms? Because that's something we use with Hopin. And honestly, you could consider a lot of our Sakoko strategy as breakout rooms, like our Epic Office Hours, where mentors get to meet with potential startups or entrepreneurs in kind of private one-on-one rooms, and yet in this digital space. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that also goes kind of hand in hand with someone asked a question about Zoom fatigue. I think Hopin and the breakout sessions and the networking aspect kind of give more of a feel like you're doing something else other than watching people on Zoom and talking heads. So if you get bored or you're starting to feel like you need something else, you can go connect with someone in networking, or you can go to breakout sessions where it's more relaxed, less like more of an open topic, open-ended discussion.
Sure. I love breakout rooms. I think it's definitely a way to get people like clicking and engaging with people. I know like a lot of people can get lost in the platform if you have them like click buttons and stuff. I know that for just being like clear in your run of shows and in your agenda, so it'd be like, if you're trying to talk to this person, then you need to go to this room, and you can see the name of this room right here, and then have like a screenshot of like where they need to go. And that sort of helps with just wayfinding and usability of these new platforms, because a lot of people are saying that it's hard to learn new stuff every time, and sometimes when there's no standard. Like Zoom seems like a standard. A lot of people use Zoom, but not everybody uses Zoom. Sometimes when I get invited to an event, it's like something I haven't even heard of. And it's weird to like, you start to realize how to navigate once you get into it, but the more that you use it and the more that you explore other platforms is going to be like the best way to figure out how to use it and to explain it to somebody who's using it for the first time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that leads to another question I saw in the chat, which is, how do you make sure guests understand how to use these platforms enough before the event goes live? And I think the design part of that for me is, can we engage with users? Can we think about our users, how we're actually going to do that? Engage some design thinking in such a way that we're thinking about our attendee experience. We don't want to just drop people into the deep end, because we have customers who are maybe younger like the rest of us, and we have customers who are pretty old and getting used to the whole being on the computer 24/7 thing. And on my end for graphic design, we're doing everything we can to send out really helpful emails, eliminate make the instructions as clear and concise and consistent as possible. But any other thoughts on onboarding people to these digital platforms?
Yeah, I was laughing a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit pointed towards me. I will make a lot of videos that are sort of like how-tos, but they're kind of tricky. You don't want to create a video that's hey, okay, you got to make sure your microphone's connected, your video's connected. You want to do this and that, very like pointed. You got to make it fun and engaging. Okay, how can someone network? What are some nuanced ways of kind of going about that? So that's a bit of a tricky part to kind of navigate in the design thinking.
And how many times have I even asked you, Justin, to make a video, and then it turns out, what, this isn't necessarily going to be the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
You got to the front end work you can put into that to just make sure you're covering your bases will definitely pay off towards the end of producing any sort of material for people to understand your platforms.
Yeah, I've written a few scripts a few times over because they're either too pointed, too step by step, or very nuanced and short.
There we go.
I would say, in addition to having explainer videos to send out to attendees or clients beforehand, having the ability to do a dry run or a dress rehearsal, or even having just open office hours where you hang out in the event page, see if anybody comes in, just keep it open so people can spontaneously pop by and like explore the platform without being on a time constraint. That definitely helps. But also, if you want somebody to like actually show up, definitely be like, hey, let's schedule a 15 to 30-minute dry run. We'll show you how to use like the platform, and it'll be relatively easy. Something that I need to constantly remind myself is that I am repeating the same thing to like a bunch of people. Also, I use this platform every single day. So you have to make sure that you're explaining it like it's new every single time in a way that's easy to understand for somebody who's seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, I've had that issue of where I was trying to explain OBS to someone at the pretty much the beginning of COVID. So maybe we could stream that way, and I could see everyone just scratching their heads and very confused. So I had to kind of work on how do I explain to people what I'm thinking in my head and I know is correct.
There you go. Yeah, there's definitely a gap between those two. For speaking from experience personally, right? Folks, I gotta say, this chat has a lot of fantastic resources. So I hope that everyone's participating. I mean, it's kind of tricky to copy and paste things from Zoom. So I'd be going through there, copy and paste and saving what's good. We're gonna answer a couple more questions, but I wanted to circle back to something we talked about a little bit and has also been mentioned in the chat, which is Zoom fatigue. It's something that I'm actually pretty like rah about. People got to know about Zoom fatigue, but the idea is that cognitive scientists have figured out that being in a Zoom call is more exhausting than talking to someone face to face. And why is that? Partially it's because you don't have the in-person body language, right? Which our brains heavily rely on to communicate. Some estimate that that's 90% of how human beings communicate with each other. And then the other thing is when you're in a Zoom call, you can only focus on, the people's eyes and then, what they're actually saying. And that's an intense level of focus. It's not usually what you're doing. Usually you can look around the room, you can gauge other people's responses that are sitting next to you. It's completely counter to the way that our brains have evolved. And I'm passionate about this, the kind of cognitive behind speech and things like that. So that's why I got the background on this. But how would y'all say that we combat that Zoom fatigue, that video conferencing fatigue here at Capital Factory?
Aaron, you want to go for it or you want to take it?
I'll take it. Thanks, Justin.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will share this link a little bit later, but a speaker at Austin Startup Week said that one of the best ways to have people engage with you and pay attention to you is to show your hands while you are speaking, because that means that you're not typing, it means you're not texting, and it just means that you're like really there. So that's like a small thing that could really, really help with Zoom fatigue. Another thing is just speaking slowly and also just being like more expressive, because we're so distanced now. It's like having one of our senses taken away, that we can sort of take some tips from like the ASL community, which is they communicate by being extremely expressive and using your hands. And that's something that we could use to combat Zoom fatigue. Another thing is just keeping it short. Like, I don't want to sit around for an hour in a meeting. So if an hour-long meeting can be cut down to 20 minutes and having a sick agenda that you can stay attached to, that'll help a lot.
Come on, designers, we know how to do this. Keep it short and sweet.
Man,
that's something that I try to push for in my meetings wherever I have any sort of latitude to do so. Go for it, Justin.
I was going to say, I feel like I came unprepared with no scientific facts on this one. Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate, just make it short. If you can engage with your entire team or your entire event to make sure everyone's engaged and involved, that really helps. And if you're like showing slides, obviously don't talk off your slides, or just try not to have slides in general, because it mostly just kind of takes away from everything that's going on.
Well, dangerous bringing up slides in my presence, because I'm king slides over here. But great answers, actually. I loved the call out to the ASL community, how we're able in this rare moment to harness some insight from maybe unexpected sources, but sources that have a lot of wisdom to offer. So that really touched me, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let's move on to, let's see here. We have a bunch of questions we're trying to answer here.
Yeah, to Evelyn's point, yeah, it definitely depends on how slides are designed and utilized.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think simpler is better, even on Zoom. It's that way in real life. But if people got to read paragraphs of text in your Zoom call, that's a torture on top of a torture, a hat upon a hat, perhaps. Now let's talk. What are some unexpected positives of going virtual? I know that sometimes it can feel like the negatives are very obvious for us, but I think there have actually been quite a few positives.
Comfy clothes. I get to wear my hoodies without
Justin,
anyone,
the king of comfy, calling in here. We love it.
I'd probably say we're able to access more high profile speakers that wouldn't normally happen. People outside of Texas are able to attend our events. So being more global in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an interesting thing, because at Capital Factory, a big part of our positioning is Texas, 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 because we love Texas. We definitely want Texans to be involved in our ecosystem, but we have such a unique thing to offer to people, and we're so democratic in the way that we try to give out resources. We want really scrappy startups. We want big, important startups. And we just want you to be here. And the ability to move that to an audience all over the world. Even today in our little Zoom session today, we got our people from Canada, we got our people from all over the States. I mean, it really kind of amazes me. And I think that it removes barriers that traditionally would stop people from being able to attend these events. Erin, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everybody said. I'm happy to have attendees from as far as upstate New York. And then I also saw somebody say there's no more traffic. That's a good one.
There we go.
Yeah.
You could say we've already eliminated the need to build all the new stuff in Austin here. We're just zooming in already, faster than a Elon Musk boring tunnel, right? Alrighty. How about from Lady Jane Aqua here? Any tips for attendee interaction engagement in large Zoom workshops? We've had that experience where, we're working with some cutting edge technologies, and once in a while, we might be a little bit too big for them, but there are ways that we've been able to kind of cover for that and shuffle things around. Even Sococo, once in a while, if we have technical difficulties, we've got backups on backups. And I think that's true for any platform. If you have a lot of people coming in, do your best to estimate what the bandwidth is going to be like, and adjust as it goes. Any other thoughts on really large events here in the digital space?
I'll go. So a really cool way of interacting with your audience is definitely like using polls and voting, especially if it's big. And if there's a poll integration tool that you could use in your virtual event, that is a great, fast way to get feedback without having to sift through a bunch of chat. Another way that I saw yesterday in an event that was hosted by one of my colleagues is that she used QR codes in her slide deck. So people who were using their computer could whip out their phones, take a picture of the QR code, and that would lead them to an external website where you could submit a vote. And then it was instantly posted. The results were instantly posted on the screen after voting closed. So it's a great tool that you could use to interact with large audiences.
I would also add for Hop In, we do multiple stages. So I think we'll have probably 3 stages going at once. And it sounds a little counterproductive, but spread out your attendees so they can all kind of get as much interaction as possible from one event.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, in some ways, if you're going to be virtual, I think it's worth it to go for maybe some multimedia, some interactive things that maybe you normally wouldn't do. If I'm making a presentation for people in an actual room, I usually would stay away from a lot of that stuff because I think in my own, philosophy about public speaking, it's about people talking to other people. We've already got the barrier of technology. Why not embrace how possibly interactive it could be, playing games, getting these Q&As, even the old QR code, a standard for graphic designers. We can't even get into that one during this talk. We don't have enough time. But I wanted to point out, Brianna Chenkin had another fantastic question. What are some tools you've used to facilitate one-on-one meetings or mentor sessions? This is a big part of how Capital Factory used to operate when we were in person, and it's still one of the larger parts of how we operate today. What do you guys think about one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, a great tool. It's a little hard to master though, is called Mixmax. There's an integration where it'll plug your calendar directly into your email, and all the person that you're scheduling a meeting with just has to click a time that you're available with, and it will automatically send both parties a calendar invite. So that's probably the simplest way. It's a little, like I said, it's a little difficult to actually run that program, but once you kind of figure it out, it's full steam ahead.
For our program called Epic Office Hours, which is basically speed dating between entrepreneurs and Capital Factory mentors, we use Sococo. And just like that map that you saw earlier that Eric created, we basically assign a mentor to stay in each room. And then every 15 minutes, these startup founders rotate to a different room based on their like specific agenda that they get. And that's something that you definitely need to have like open office hours so people can like play around and navigate for it. But just having like a person stay in one spot and another group move helps a lot with navigation.
Absolutely. We have a very smart audience here, clearly, because a lot of the questions they're asking were the questions I prepared ahead of time. So we're syncing up mentally. We love to see it. A question I had, I phrased it like this: what pitfalls wouldn't be immediately obvious, in this transition to the digital landscape? But another user down here just said, what are some mistakes that you guys made along the way that you learned from? I can start off, I think, talking a little bit about man, oh man. So with Sococo, the original idea we had was, people know our space at Capital Factory. They know the physical building. We have thousands of attendees come in for events. We have, upwards of maybe even like hundreds of thousands of people who have been in the building, period. Obama's been in the building. That should be, the high watermark for people know, where you work, right?
Way to mic drop that.
Don't have that picture for us. Sorry, I didn't prepare it. But anyways, we thought that people were familiar with the layout of our building, and then we tried to translate that 3D space into a 2D space in Sococo. Uh-oh, that would be Horse, Aaron's beautiful dog. He's chiming in, that's okay. But so we tried to take a 3D floor plan, turn it into a 2D video game, and it totally didn't work. First off, the way that this game works is that weird angles don't work that well. Well, we lived in like a trapezoidal, weird, very angular building, and it was a nightmare for me to put all together. And secondly, the real life floor plan just didn't translate to how things worked in the digital world. And I think the larger lesson beyond kind of the weird game design thing that I had to go through is that sometimes you have to let go of these things that worked really well in the real world for what's going to work better in the virtual world. We can return to those things whenever we return to normal life, but I mean, for the time being, we just got to do what works best. Any other thoughts on mistakes or hurdles that y'all overcame transferring to the digital medium here?
I feel like I would have to say, assuming everyone is technically savvy as I am, it was definitely a big pitfall. So trying trying to get everyone up to speed, like I said earlier, was definitely a challenge that I did not see coming. Working for a tech company too.
LOL.
I mean, I'll say though that I think most people were pretty good troopers about it. There were of course some growing pains, but I think we've all pretty much adapted here.
Yeah.
Because we had to.
Hopefully
Yeah.
9 months in.
The like flexibility from people and just the kindness and patience that really like bubbled up was super nice. I made a list of pitfalls that weren't like super obvious for me. One of them, like, definitely there's always going to be technical issues when you're streaming or doing anything. And that's just something that you need to account time for. But also just like knowing which browsers don't work with some specific software.
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
also, I know somebody else mentioned this in the chat, knowing what software can't be used with specific clients because of privacy issues, or like there are some websites that are blocked by some companies. For example, at Capital Factory, we work a lot with the Department of Defense,
Mhm.
and they they don't use Chrome. And sometimes it's like really hard to work with them, especially when we're having like defense themed events. And it's like, what are we going to use? So just definitely working through those hurdles and making sure that's like something that you discuss with your clients beforehand. Be like, are there any browser limitations? And then another like problem that we ran into is that we actually broke some websites. Like we broke Sakoko a couple of times just because of how many people were there.
It's
And so
innovating, baby. What can we say?
yeah, just like crashing servers or something that you as a user of a server can't predict. But that might be something that you have to like ping the developers for. So that's something that I didn't know. But it's something that we're constantly adjusting to as well.
We're grateful for our IT help here at Capital Factory, but in the pandemic, we've all become IT help in one way or another. And, it just teaches you to be grateful for the people who help make these, platforms run for us. So I wanted to shout out another question that we had that ties into a lot of this stuff from David O. What do you guys think about attendees chatting while a speaker and presentation is ongoing? I would say in my experience, some of our platforms like Sakoko allow people to do this. And we've had some pretty big Sakoko meetings. And I would say that people have been pretty polite all in all. It's kind of the teachers calling on you effect where I think people are reticent to just unmute and start, broadcasting here unless there are very specific situations. What do you guys think?
I don't personally like it. Like kind of Eric, you were saying earlier how when we talk and we're 90% body language, there's a lot of people interrupting each other. It's already happened on this panel. I've interrupted you a few times, so apologies for that. I think people are doing it here. Typing in the chat is better than actually talking because if it's not relevant to the conversation that's going on, you're just going to derail and uh, have more people on Zoom and more Zoom fatigue and all the bad stuff that comes with it.
I love using the chat. I think it's a great way for people to post their ideas before they forget about them.
Mhm.
However, I would definitely suggest having a chat moderator who could filter through a lot of the side conversations that are happening to pull up the questions or talking points that need to happen so that the person that's speaking or presenting doesn't get distracted from like trying to monitor the chat while at the same time getting through an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing when we were doing live events. If there's a important talk going on, and there's a bunch of people in the back chatting, it ruins the flow, and maybe some of the speakers get upset. So if you're really wanting to have chatter while there's a talk or a meeting or some event going on, you'll probably want to just go into another room or just use the chat if you really want to talk to said people.
I think that that's true. And as designers, we're always thinking about constraints, and in some ways adding these constraints of, look, only the people in this panel are going to talk, or we're going to really use the constraint of the chat box in order to initialize conversation, engage with people. I think that those do produce actually really engaging events. But back to my first point, if you really want to have a rompous kind of everyone's talking all at once, it is possible, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it's best for all scenarios, but you can do it. I don't want you to be like, you know what? It always has to be one person talking in every Zoom. So
Yeah.
creativity can be applied in ways that maybe would not be that obvious all at once.
It's
right.
the
Of course.
last thing I want to add to that too is we've experimented with pulling attendees from the actual event, putting them in StreamYard so they can come up and talk to the speakers, ask questions that way to keep it more engaged, to kind of shine a light on some of the attendees, make them feel special. So that's kind of a way we're having those conversations without having everyone talk at once.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of an asynchronous communication.
Mhm.
And I love talking in the chat. What can I say? And props to everyone who's been being so well behaved in our chat. I'm out here trying to read it as fast as I can. It's breaking my brain a little bit because I'm not as used to it as some of us here on this panel, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless. Now, I have a fun question from Shay Brown here, and it's maybe directed towards both of you because you used to both work in our kind of future technologies lab of sorts. Do you think that we'll be using augmented and virtual reality for some of these virtual events? From Shay Brown, by the way. Thank you, Shay. You've been adding a lot to our conversation. We appreciate it.
That's a great question, and I was thinking about that earlier. Everyone at the beginning of quarantine, everyone thought, "Wow, VR is gonna explode," and we didn't see that happen. The tech's getting cheaper and cheaper, and it's getting easier to use. You don't need a computer to connect it to. It's all in one now. There, it, I attribute it to it's called the Space Invader effect, or you can think of it as like the Halo effect for Microsoft. There isn't that one really awesome title that is pushing people to go buy these headsets. A lot of people still view them as gimmicky, or just kind of the older generation that thinks of like the Nintendo Power or the Nintendo VR headset that was out there, which was like 2D pixels playing Mario and just red and black. I don't really expect it to go anywhere for the next 5 years.
Yeah, great question, Shay. Both Justin and I have worked a lot in the VR space, VR and AR. And I agree with Justin. We thought that VR was going to blow up now that we're all working from home, but like honestly, it hasn't. But I think that like we're going to start creating spaces that are similar to Sakoko, where we can like aim. It's kind of like AIM 2.0, where we're all like in this same ether, in this space where we know that we're like working on the same thing, or we're working at the same time, and just so we could be like virtually around people, kind of like what we do in Sakoko, where you're just like in a space and you see people, and like when people are talking, they're like light flashes on their icon, and then you're like, okay, so like they're working, we're in the same space, and we're working at the same company. I think we're going to see a lot more like ambient environments for people to hang out in over the web.
Yeah, and it's also too much of a hassle too to like really set up these VR equipment. Like I have my own gaming computer at home, and I was at the beginning of COVID, I was thinking why don't I just go grab one of these VR headsets and set it up, and I can game in VR at home, and it just wasn't worth it. The headset gets hot after 30 minutes. You get all sweaty, and a lot of people are what's the word? Like kind of like pampered to all the old school and new school like VR movies and TV shows that come out that are very very easy. Ready Player One, showed an incredible world that is just not realistic with current VR tech.
Yeah, that makes me think, I think Zoom fatigue is bad. VR fatigue, that's a whole nother thing. You got to do your neck exercises. I do want to point out, even though I'm pretty removed from the VR space, that there are certain places like in our defense sector where really important training that maybe would be a little riskier to do in person is now able to be done in VR. So maybe, events aren't going to be the first place where we're going to see this, but I could definitely see VR being a part of people's work life more than we thought before, right?
Yeah, it's not dying per se. It's very niche. It's really just in enterprise use right now. There are people using it, consumers using it for home, for gaming, but a lot of companies are using it to train employees. I remember reading an article a few months back that UPS is using VR headsets to train their truck drivers. One of the military companies here, AFWorks, the Air Force, they have a full VR flight simulator that they use to train their rookie pilots over at Austin Bergstrom.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential things, and let's not discount AR either. It's all coming out here. I think we got time for about 2 more questions, so I wanted to grab one final question from our chat box. I really like this question. Any advice on overcoming that awkward silence moment during an interactive session when the floor is open but no one's speaking? I mean, look, I kind of love awkward silences, so I can't be the person who chimes in first here.
The awkward pause is good because it gives you kind of a second to collect your thoughts. There's a thing that rappers do where they will use filler words to think of the next word to rhyme for. Eminem does it a lot. So yeah, it's great. I mean, it also goes back to the body language. A lot of the body language when you're talking to people is to point at them. And you've seen Erin do it. She'll point to the left. I'm on my screen. I'm up and to the right. So it comes in handy sometimes.
Justin, would you like to give us an example of how Eminem uses filler words, please?
Not at all. You can Google that.
You can start the rap at any time, Justin, please.
I will find a link and post it.
I think you can totally use awkward silence to get people to recenter, because sometimes people are talking and you're droning on, and if there's a silence, somebody's going to be like, yo, did my internet go down? Should I be paying attention? Did somebody ask me a question and I wasn't paying attention? So you could totally use that. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I love awkward silences because I'm obnoxious and I'm like, time for me to fill them up with my words. But I think you can also step back and kind of live in it a little bit and, give someone else who would like to speak the opportunity to do so.
And
all right. Go for it.
Just last comment, kind of to what Evelyn said, awkward silence isn't often as awkward for the participants. It gives a good breath to them because maybe there's just a consistent flow of information and they can't retain it all.
There we go. All right, I'm going to finish up with one more question, but before I do that, I wanted to let everyone know, I would suggest, looking through these comments and copying some links and resources because we've had a great comment session here. I wanted to thank our Austin Design Week liaison, Maddie Huey. Thank you so much for all, the help you put into this panel. She's great, you guys. Justin, Erin, thank you both so much. And my final question is, if you were to tell your former self something after experiencing this virtual transition all this time, what would you tell them? Maybe circa January 2020, Justin and Erin.
Just to relax and take it one step at a time and not to outpace yourself or outpace your coworkers. Just make sure everyone is on the same page at the same time.
I would say just to since we're all going virtual, I would say just be patient and be human about things. Now that we're all working from home, we are invited into other people's homes. And so things are just a tad bit more casual than they used to. So you can be a person, we're not robots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely aren't robots. And I think I felt kind of the same way in answering this question for myself. Because I would tell myself that designers are adaptable and resilient, and that I think everyone in this room, everyone in this chat is a designer to some extent because of the way that we all solve problems in our lives and in our careers. And we're all going to get through this, and we're even going to have a little bit of fun while we do it. So thanks again, everyone, for being part of our panel. Anything else we got to plug from Austin Design Week real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say we have a survey in the chat that y'all can take. And also, if you want to continue the conversation, please join our Slack and feel free to post any links that you found really helpful or any findings. And thank you so much to our speakers. This was awesome. Just homies hanging out.
Homies hanging out.
Homies hanging out.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.